for a good scenario project?
Well, I want to give you two things to think about when we have a scenario project. One is that for it to really work, you have to allow people to use their imagination, because we're talking about futures from which there's no data, right? So the world is all caught up in big data and analytics and looking backward all the time for what's going to happen in the future. So, I mean, people don't realize that there is no such thing as real-time data. It's microseconds old as soon as it gets processed by an analytics engine, and it's trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. But we're now talking about things for which there is no data. When we're talking about a 15 or 16 or 20-year time horizon, there's no data being broadcast from there going, guys, this is where the future is going, right? It's not happening. So you have to allow people to use their imaginations, use what they know about the world and what their experience has been about how things unfold. One of the rules of thumb is to look kind of twice as back as far as you look ahead. So if you think if we look 20 years in the future and you look 40 years back and you go, what was audio technology, what did it look like? And you go, reel-to-reel tapes were big, right? 40 years ago. There were, ham operators, right? And there's all this stuff that, we can't even imagine now in a world of social media and MP3 players. But 40 years ago, that was the technology du jour, right? People were using reel-to-reel tapes and then 8-tracks and cassettes. And so when you look at that kind of path of history, it can inform how quick the pace is that you're looking at. So use your imagination, but also use your historical sense and bring yourself and your historicality, how you think about yourself in history to the stage. The other thing that you want to do is really not just think about a scenario planning project as a scenario planning project that has its own story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't have an end. It never ends. Because what you want to do is integrate it into your decision-making process, not just your strategic planning, but your decision-making process. So every time you are making a big decision about how do we invest something, what's the new curriculum that we should do, what kinds of new courses should we offer, you go back and, again, anthropomorphizing the scenarios, you ask them the question. In this future, what kinds of classes would we have to teach for us to be relevant to the world? And that's, you may not have asked that question of the scenarios before. That's a good afternoon discussion of people sitting around and going, in this future, with these kinds of job skills, with this kind of logic going on, this kind of regulatory environment, this kind of workforce, this kind of government structure, this kind of governance model, these are the things that we could do that would provide value to our constituency, right? And so doing that all the time, then the scenarios become shorthand, right? They start becoming things that you can use on a day-to-day basis. Whenever you're asking a decision that's more than, a binary thing of I'm doing a short-term project and I've got A and B I got to do, don't waste your time playing with the scenarios. But if you're looking at something that's a 5, 10, 15-year impact and investment, which in universities and colleges, it's everything from what's going to be in our course catalog that we have to develop courses that are going to live for a long time, or what buildings do we invest in? How do we recruit, and how do we engage students in the imagination of the population of our state? Those are longer-term issues, and those are things that the scenarios can help you with in terms of using them as a sounding board and a creative area. And innovation is a big one, right? So you can actually have whole sessions just around asking particular questions and thinking about how the scenarios unleash innovative thinking, because one of the things that organizations often do is encourage people to be innovative, but they don't give them permission to do that, right? They tell them to do that and they give them incentives, but they don't actually give them kind of mental permission. The scenarios give you mental permission because they've given you a future that you're not completely tied to, and you can go out and explore that to your heart's content.